you would for 2 of them.
Hardest thing, I think the hardest thing is going to be finding the land appropriate to, and enough land to build on. That may be a problem.
You're from the planning office, right?
I am.
I believe Chris told me that there was some land up around Gap Creek. It might be for sale up in that area. Do it.
What do we need, 50 acres?
I don't know, probably.
Kevin?
There's 100-some acres, I think, it said.
Typically on the elementary, they recommend that you 14,
How many?
on the elementary K-8,
Yeah.
have 14 acres. Now that doesn't include the stadiums
Yeah.
and stuff. So you would figure at least probably 30 with your stadiums, because I'd be curious, but I can find out pretty quick what Hampton's got, because you know they've got a baseball field, softball field spread out in this direction, football's in this direction. There's several acres up there. That Valley's got a complex that's got several acres, time you figure the top and the bottom. So I'd say minimum 30, maybe more.
If you level Clallan out, it'd be at 30. On the hill. But my point is, there's possibilities of land, you know?
Now, when you talk about land, okay, you buy land, then there's development. It's going to cost a lot to develop the land. Sewer is something to consider. Water, all this has got to be figured in.
Yeah, that's where an architect has to
Yeah,
come in.
that's where you got to have an architect.
Yeah, we can't, we're not,
No,
there's no way I'm going to even attempt to do that. We're just looking at the overall. Now, one thing I will say, on land acquisition, okay, that was for me. Acquisition, I couldn't say it, it'd come out right. If the flatter of the land, which would take less excavation, is going to be more expensive than land that would require more excavation. Therefore, it might come out fairly close. You know,
In the long run, it probably would.
come out pretty close to site.
Yeah.
The more, if it's more mountainous, it's not going to cost you as much as that flat
It's going
land.
to cost you more.
Because it's going to cost you more to do that, but it's going to work out.
We've been kicking around the high school. I think we got to learn to walk before we can run.
Yeah.
I think one of our first priorities, like you said in the beginning, is the children. And right now, I think the imperative is 2 middle schools. To do something with our middle schools, to take the pressure off of some of the kids we've got. We don't have the facilities to put the kids in from K through 8.
Well, the reason I was going high school first is because we could renovate high school like Hampton and make that into a nice middle school.
Yeah, and you're going to have to, you know, if you're looking at, like you're talking about the 2 high school scenario, if you go and do that, I would buy enough property. I would buy enough property at each site to build a middle school and a high school.
Oh yeah, I would too. That's good. That's future planning. That's what you'd have to do.
Yeah, but you know, and start with your middle schools and add your high school.
You could do it that way.
Yeah.
You could do it either way, but what, you know, if you're going to put them all on the same side, you know, which makes a lot of sense to me. There's, you know, there's so many ways to look at this stuff up.
Yeah, you got, and even with 1 or 2, 1 high school or 2 high school scenarios, you still got to look at things like your transportation costs and how is this going to affect the situation. And these are good numbers, but a lot of these numbers are low because they don't include the benefits like Dr. Ward was talking about. They don't include utilities, and so we're not looking at real numbers.
No, we're looking at numbers that are comparative between the high school and middle school.
Yeah.
I mean, 2 high school and 1 high school. That's what I was trying to do. I wasn't trying to come up with concrete numbers because I don't have that data.
But I think you've got to learn to run before you can walk. I don't want to get too far ahead. I think the 1 high school concept is good. I don't have a problem with that. But I'm right now concerned with the kids, and particularly the K through 8 kids. The pressure in the county is on the elementary schools and not the high schools. Now I know high schools need to be updated technologically. that's a foregone conclusion. But we need to do something with our middle school system to get these young kids ready for that high school.
You mean take care of the middle schools and then work?
Yeah.
You know, the thing about it is,
I mean, if you prepare that kid for going to high school, when he gets there, he's a long ways ahead.
if you took the middle school students and you got them broke down to true middle school,
Yeah,
that's going to take a lot of pressure off the elementaries.
yeah.
And some of your elementaries would probably be large enough without much, if any, additions. And you could save a ton of money that way. You could. That's another way of approaching this thing. There's lots of ways to approach it, and that's another good one. Yeah. But I guess the reason I was going to high school first is because that would free up the high schools for middle school. Then once you freed that up, then you could renovate the middle schools and then have the elementary schools. You know, and then you could spread them out. Because if you looked at one of those, I was thinking that maybe like Happy Valley Elementary, make Happy Valley High School as an elementary school. It'd be, you know, use that and use Hampton as a middle school for a certain area, which would free up some of the others. That's what I was thinking. You know, but you're going to a different approach to it. Just a different approach is all it is. Same thing, different approach. And either one's fine. But right here I'm showing that there is going to be close to $500,000 a year difference in operation. You know, which is quite a bit, isn't it? Because I'll tell you what, some of your high schools, the teacher-pupil ratio is terrible. When you got less than 200 students at one high school, and less than 400 at another, and around 400 at another, that's not good for high schools. You know, it's not a good way to look at it. Let's see what else I've got on here. We'll run along with it. You know, when we get that would be something that probably once we get the overall, I think the school board needs to delve into what you're talking about a whole lot more than what we go into, because they're going to have to start scheduling how we're going to do this. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
That's what I'm thinking. That's something I would stay away from, is the scheduling portion of it. I keep hitting that wrong button, don't I? The PowerPoint broke it down, but I don't have time. Okay, staff reduction. For one high school, you'd reduce it 3 principals. If you look down here at 2 high schools, you'd reduce it two principals. You know, which is common sense. With one high school, you're going to reduce 4 assistant principals. You're going to reduce 2 assistant principals with the 2 high schools. Okay. With one high school, 334 teachers. 34 teachers. God, we're going to have a bunch of our own. And 28 teachers with the 2 high schools. That's how much you're going to reduce it. So it's going to be about, what did I say, about 6 difference in the teachers. School counselors, you're not going to be able to adjust it at all on either one. As a matter of fact, you're going to have to, if you've got 2 high schools, you're going to have to hire an additional counselor, because if we have a CTE center up here, you need to have a CTE counselor at that structure, that facility. You've got to. Bookkeepers, you go from, you're going to reduce to 3 bookkeepers with 1 high school, but 2 bookkeepers with 1 high school, and so forth. Media specialists, no reduction. 1 with the 1 high school. so you're gonna have a reduction there. So, you're gonna save about, what I put there, budget reduction, 1.6 million per year for grades 9 through 12, right there. So, and that's what I had on this, that's all I had. And all that you have on your handout, every bit of this is on the handout, I just went ahead and put that up there, but you have that. So that's what it's gonna look like if we, comparing one high school and two high schools. You know? So, any questions, anything about what I've done on that? It's just something I've thrown out there. Now, the next scenario situation, Kevin and Keith, was what was it now? I forgot what it was now. Tell us again.
Converting our high schools to a 3-grade high school and setting up the 2 middle schools and 7 through 9, using that as a, what we talked about, a 9th grade academy
Yeah.
type of thing, to prepare them for that high school. This takes the pressure off of high schools, give you plenty of room at your high school, and the middle schools takes your pressure off your elementary school.
Right. That's what we talked about earlier.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about earlier. I haven't done any economics on this, and I haven't bothered Kevin with it because it's a budget thing. But I don't know. What do you think?
I think, we need probably, as we're getting closer, hopefully getting this year's budget set, moving forward, we meet and discuss it a little bit further, but, your elementaries, your middles, your high schools, of course, is 3 different plans, 3 different ways to go. Look at elementaries, we're looking at elementaries, or I guess locations where you can, consolidate into 1 elementary, close 2, or if you got one in good enough shape, pull into it, add on to it, you know. Middle schools, always, you know, you got 1 or 2 ways looking at your middle school, scenario would be, build new high schools, use your high schools as your middle schools. Or come in with middle school concept and find the strategic locations and basically just determine what number you need and plant them right there in the center of those communities and pull off from your crowded elementaries. Now you could probably, if you did that, you could probably close schools as well. Based on the fact that you'd have less at some of your nicer ones that you could pull on in and shut down, you know. So there's, I think, Jerry, just looking to the fact that there's just many ways you can look at this, many ways that, and I think anything you do, any way that we organize this, any way that we look at it, there's going to be a tremendous savings. Now, savings is important, but I think at the end of the day, you know, as it's been mentioned 2 or 3 times today alone, we've got to look at how it affects the kids and what's academically the best setup for students, and how does it allow us to educate moving forward into the, you know, next wave of change as we, you know, because education has changed and will continue to change. So we sit down and scratch out some scenarios. You know, you got Stony Creek, you got Hampton, then you got Pearl Mountain off to itself, then you got the lower end down there. And the lower end, you know, you really encompass your Happy Valley and Central, and really no further than it is range. So, you know, we can. And really, Keyburg sort of sits to where it could be pulled back up and encompassed into the Hunter, Lower Stone Creek area. So I think, you know, that's something that as we sit down and develop some additional scenarios outside of the high school, maybe if we want to do that, for the board to look at and consider, we need to probably time to do that, bring it in, and if we present it to this group, then turn around and when, Jerry, are you planning on scheduling something with the board? Is there a meeting
You're not talking about August.
August?
I don't know where, you know, we're gonna have to adjust that, what we originally planned. All right.
Yeah, and that's fine, it's all on paper, so what are you thinking, August,
A workshop in August.
educational committee first or after? That's after, ain't it?
After, yeah. The board has to take care of their business first.
Okay.
Then we'll take it to the education committee. You know,
That would be good.
you know, once we finish here, when we turn it over to the board itself, the school board is going to take over at that point. This committee will dissolve, will be no longer functioning. So we'll turn it over to actually the superintendent and the chairman of the board, and they will have to pick it up from that point on. We're done at that point, with what we can do. And then once the school board goes through a series of workshops and things like that, led by the, like I say, the superintendent and the chairman of the board, then we'll present it to the education committee. The education committee will discuss, hopefully with us, about any concerns they may have. We might need to adjust it further. Then it goes, we'll have to go in front of the full commission. And they might have to adjust it some more at that point. Don't want to just rush right into it. We want to do this thing step by step. But we have just about, you know, once we come up with some scenarios and get written up, this committee has done what we were tasked to do, if I'm not, is that the way you all see it? You agree with that, Keith? So that's what I'm thinking. Now, I given you a scenario on middle and elementary school, you know, how to go about do that. I mean, how to locate those things last month or last meeting. Has anybody, and you said you liked it fine like it was, has anybody else had time to look it over, and is there any adjustments you would like to do, or what do we need to do with that? Because the actual cost numbers are going to have to, once the school board decides what the best overall scenario, then there's going to have to be some major number crunching up here. Now I'll tell you some of the concerns I have. If we're going to hire custodians, I'd like to see, you know, let's get down to economically feasible. If we're going to hire people, if we want good people to come in, we need to pay them a decent salary and need to have benefits. I'd like to see just straightforward and what you need in full-time people. All fire professionals need to be the same way. Now, I know you can save a ton of money, but that's just my thoughts. Everybody else might be wrong, and economically might not be able to do it that way. But I think if we're going to hire people, we need to hire them and pay them a decent salary. You know? And they should have benefits. You know? They become more dedicated. Well, I don't know how they can be more dedicated, but they become very dedicated to the system when you do it that way.
Yeah.
You know, they don't have to go out here and worry about this, worry about that, look for other part-time jobs. I was talking to a lady yesterday, Primos. She worked there part-time, and she worked at Walmart part-time. 2 part-time jobs just trying to make a living. No benefits. Now that bothers me.
That's unfortunate, because that's one of the big problems in this county is, and Mr. Lawrence has mentioned it several times, we need good, sound industry that provides good jobs with benefits. And that's hard to come by. We've had a decline in the last several years, and unfortunately, I think to some extent education has been one of the problems. And some people, I don't know, you probably answer this better than I can. When looking at the county as a site, and looking at the educational system as supplying their needs, we find that we don't really have what we really need.
And no matter what you know, what people read on their websites and what they think is much more important than what's real. It is real to them. We may have the best education system in the state of Tennessee, but when you read about it, the numbers don't show that. So that hurts business industry from coming in. And that's going to.
They look at Tennessee as a whole. I spent 4 hours going over that website, looking at the 3-year span, county by county by county in Tennessee. I only found less than 5 that had no decline.
Right.
After that, at the end of the 3 years. So it's not just here, it's this whole state.
Oh, it's all-
And I would be curious to see what it is countrywide.
Yeah.
If the drop is not consistent as well.
Yeah.
I mean, that 3 year it's showing everywhere. But how many people actually think outside of that box? So Carter County goes, okay, I'll look over here in Washington County, I'll look over here in Sullivan County, but they won't migrate over to Middle and West Tennessee to see how they're doing. Same as others.
You mentioned industry. I've got a little experience in that field there. I can tell you firsthand, the first thing, and you've heard this from me 1,000 times, and you've read another 1,000, the first thing that they are concerned about is workforce. What kind of education system you have? Do you have the workforce that I need to operate my business? That's number one, and I've been preaching that now for 7 years. But that's, if you want to, you're going to have to fix education first. There you go.
That's the foundation.
That's the foundation.
Education is the foundation of any community. And I heard Kevin say it, I've heard other people say it. You can pour money on it. That won't necessarily fix it.
No good.
What, you know, it's got to be economically efficient. And then, but you still need to provide the programs. There's a mindset change we need to have, you know? I think Carter County has some of the finest teachers in the world, don't get me wrong. But when I look at the websites and you talk to people away from here, they don't look at Carter County the same way we do. They just do not do it.
I don't think we've done a very good job. Or maybe it's not that we've done a very good job, we've not focused on promoting our strengths.
Right.
We need to promote our strengths, and then we need to continue on a continuous basis to work to improve our weaknesses. You know, that's with anything, and that's one of the things as a system, one of our goals, I think, that would be good to establish.
You know, one thing that Carter County could probably do, and I'm not saying this necessarily the school system, but it had to be focused a lot on the school system. If we had a good PR person, somebody, that's what they did, was promote Carter County and the school system. I'm saying Carter County because I don't think the school system needs to hire somebody to do that necessarily. But, you know, some school systems do that. They have a public relations person. And if the county wouldn't do it and focus on education, I'd like to see somewhere down the road, maybe Carter County get a public relations person. And that's what they do. You could benefit from it. The county could. But that's something different. That's not what we're doing
We
here
should have a
today.
better reputation what we do. This is the oldest area in Tennessee responsible for the creation of Tennessee. If anything, we should be leading the way. You know?
Yeah, you're right.
Instead of looking like that, like you said, an elderly community we've become, and you know, just dead in the water. And that's actually not as far from it. That's not true. I've met a ton of teachers throughout the years. Through my son's some struggle, you know, with how they perceive it should be done. Then you have some that are just born with they know what needs to be done,
Yeah.
and they know how to get into a kid's mind and their heart and really motivate them. So I mean, it does need a good spotlight.
We have a lot of great assets right here in Carter County. We really do. Main thing is getting our students ready for workforce, ready for college. I mean, look at what we have. Let's look at our strengths, okay? Right here in Carter County, we've got Tennessee Technology, one of the greatest things that's ever happened to us. We've got Northeast State right over here. We've got Milligan College right there. We've got East Tennessee State. You've got the facilities to educate. And the main thing is getting them ready.
We have to get Carter County ready to
We
move
got,
on to these
right,
other areas.
there you go.
Just that simple.
There you go.
And, you know, and I have seen over the years, not only just here in Carter County, and not just in Elizabethton or anywhere, but I have seen a lot of individuals work themselves to death and get so frustrated. They wanted to do that, and they try to do it by themselves. You can't do it by yourself. You cannot do it by yourself.
Takes,
Kenny Lou, I'm gonna use you for an example. Kenny Lou's on that, Kenny Lou's tried for years. I think you get frustrated. I'm not gonna ask you if you do or not, but I know you have to.
she does.
You work hard, and you're working like that. You feel like you're working by yourself. You're trying to pull it up with your own strengths. Folks, you can't do it. It'll kill you.
That's why you gotta work together.
And you've got to have a commitment, and everybody has to work together. You can, and you all know more teachers than I do in Carter County, but there's some excellent teachers out there. And I see teachers after about 7 or 8 years, they start getting burnt out, they call it. They get frustrated because they have been so dedicated and wanted to work and do it so much, they want to just pull everybody with them, and it just saps all their energies. But could you imagine everybody worked together and you took those same teachers who have that energy and you worked with them, what could happen in Carter County schools? You know? Can you look, am I right?
Yes.
But I get so tired. And I'm not talking about just Carter County. I've seen it in a lot of places. You work yourself to death. You spend hour upon hour, up all night trying to come up with things. And you might have a limited amount of success. But one or two things happen. As soon as that individual's gone, it's gone. Nobody else will pick it up and carry the ball. Or somebody else will be moved into a position over them, and they stop them. They don't allow them to do what they need to do. They get in their way. I've seen too many administrators get in the way of good teachers in my lifetime.
Well, I think all of us at one time had our legs knocked out by others. I know I have.
But we can't afford to have that in education.
No.
That person, you're going to get your legs knocked out from under
Yeah.
you. But at the same time, you got to have somebody get there to catch you,
Right.
set you back up and help you. But how are we going to get that mentality throughout our school?
One of the things that I think all school, well, let's say businesses, communities, individuals, and then to mix in schools with this same thought process, become static and less resistant to change. And, you know, unless sometimes we're forced to change, we continue along the static lines of what, you know, if you practice the same routines, if you practice the same patterns and habits, you're going to get the same results.
Right.
Now, if those results are not good results, you know, why continue to do it? So I think, you know, we've got to, Vince, we've got to sit and we've got to talk to our principals, our assistant principals. We've got to try to instill a different way of thinking, and in that thinking or in that thought process, we're going to have to expect certain things to be done, and then if it's not, we're going to have to be a little bit quicker to make decisions, getting people who are maybe better leaders.
We need positive people in these positions. Now, I cannot stand it, and I've seen it happen. It's been done to me and all of us. You'd be killing yourself, and somebody come in and throw you, and they'll find one little thing, and they want to put you down. It just knocks the wind out from under you. But we need positive. Our administrators need to be positive people.
That's another thing, Jerry. You know, one of the things as it relates to somebody that's scoring 1 and 2 or 3 that needs help, if we're going to provide them help, first and foremost, they're going to have to be willing and acceptance of constructive criticism.
Right.
Now, one of the things in them accepting that, we're going to have to do a good job of selling to them that we're not out for your job, because you know, if we figure out a way to get rid of you, we just got to go back and try to hire somebody to replace you.
It costs so much to do that.
I just seem to, you know, keep who we've got and then train them to be competent, capable of doing